Good morning, Laura. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Laura Bryan. I live here in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas. I've been here probably 20, well, since I've been married, so 28 years. I grew up in Northeast Texas. I have pretty much grown up going to meetings. My parents came out of the Church of Christ and started going to meetings, and I was about 4. So it's pretty much all I've known. And this is my story.
Hmm.
So, I want to say to begin with that everyone has a story. Everyone's journey is important. And I love hearing, like even the other stories that you've recorded. I've loved hearing them and watching them because everybody's story is important. And I'm going to try not to cry, but I might because this is precious to me, my story. Anyway, I hear people often express that God started dealing with them when they were very young, when they were, even as young as like 5 years old. And I'm thinking, wow,
Hmm.
what?
Hmm.
I did profess when I was 10. And then I think I was about 15 when I was baptized, but I can't really say that it was a moving of God. Um, I moved out and went to college when I was 18. And I will say that was the first time that I had ever felt like God saw me. Um, I prayed something, and I'm not going to go into that,
Hmm.
but it was something that I wanted that I felt like probably it shouldn't happen. But I prayed, God, I'm not strong enough to say no, so don't let it happen. And
Hmm.
lo and behold, of course, he didn't let it happen. And I knew at that point, God sees me
Hmm.
and he hears me. Of course, a year later, I stopped going to meetings. I had started dating a guy that wasn't in meetings, and I had a visit from the workers, sister workers there, and consequently ended up not going to meetings. So I was out of meetings for about 4 years. And then one day I felt the tug again to my heart. And I knew God was redirecting me again. And so I did. I reprofessed, started going back to meetings. I got baptized again.
Hmm.
Um, and, at that point, that was where I felt God was for me. So I was 24 when I went back to meetings. And then a year later, I got pregnant and I was not married.
Hmm.
Um, I was still going to meetings, and a sister worker called me on the phone, an older sister worker, and she told me that she had found out that I was pregnant, and she did not want me to take part in meeting at this point until after the baby was born.
Oh, Laura.
Yeah. Anyway, it is a journey, right? It's my journey all
Hmm.
along the way. So I had already talked to a brother worker that I felt comfortable with. And he told me, do not stop taking part. You keep going to meetings if that's what you feel like you need to do. And so I told her that. And she said, okay. And she hung up the phone. And that I never met her. I never heard from her before that. And I never heard from her again.
Hmm.
So that was something that, got tucked away in my heart to ponder on along the way. So I kept going to meetings. And then, let's see, I was, uh, I was 27 and was at Texarkana Convention. And I was reacquainted with who is now my husband. Jim. We got reacquainted, and that was at Texarkana when it was in July. And then it was 8 weeks later, the Monday after Rogers Convention in September, we got married. So anyway,
Mhm.
and we very much felt like that was of God. So all of this, leading up to where I am now, we have 4 kids. We have 3 grandkids and one on the way in May.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So life went along with it was after we were married, I had started looking online at Wings for Truth.
Mhm.
And so I kept up with different things that they posted. Um, I read Cherie Crop's first exit
Mhm.
letter and that. Anyway, so all of these things get tucked and pondered.
Mhm.
So then when it came out about Ira Hobbs, when it came out
Mhm.
very publicly, I had already been aware of what had happened because I read on Wings for Truth. Well, my parents were, they were finding out, and my sisters, they were finding out, and their families. And I won't go into their
Mhm.
stories, but long story short, um, they found out that, or they realized that this of meetings, the ministry did not go all the way back to the shores of Galilee, and they were
Mhm.
shocked. I myself was not shocked. I was like, how could that be anyway? So
Mhm.
anyway, they were shocked. They visited with workers, and then they ended up leaving meetings.
Mhm.
I'm still in meetings. I'm the only one in
Mhm.
my sisters, my parents,
Mhm.
and yeah, to say it rocked my world, it is, it's putting it mildly.
Mhm.
Um, and at that point, I felt like I needed to even question for myself, what am I doing? Is this what I should be doing? Um, Jim and I, we discussed it, and he was worried that I would stop going to meetings, that I would follow that, and I got to the point where I realized, no, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, anyway, and through that, I had even told my parents, I said, I think about Zacharias and Elizabeth and Joseph and Mary doing what they knew to do in the midst of corruption. They stayed
Mhm.
faithful where they were. So
Mhm.
that's what kept me, even though there were things that were not right.
Mhm.
I was doing what I knew to do. So
Mhm.
that was 10 years before Dean Brewer. Now, within those 10 years, I started asking different workers that were in our area.
Mhm.
I asked one brother worker, I said, do you believe and teach that the ministry, that salvation it only comes through listening to the gospel from the ministry? He
Mhm.
said, yes, absolutely. I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I told him, I can't teach my children that. That's like saying Jesus is the way, but you're the gatekeeper. I can't teach my children that.
Mhm.
A couple of sister workers were in our field. I asked them the same thing, and they said, yes, that is right. I was like,
Mm.
and I said the same thing to them. And one sister worker, she said to me, then why am I doing what I'm doing? I was like, you're preaching the gospel.
Yeah.
So this was within the 10 years.
Mhm.
My parents, my sister and her family leaving, and then Dean Brewer
Mhm.
happening. So then when this breaks about Dean Brewer. That summer, our daughter told us about something that happened to her. And I won't go into that. But that, really
Mhm.
rocked us as well.
Mhm.
That brought it a little closer to home.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're at that point, we are reeling. And we had a CSA meeting with Craig Winquist, and there were a couple of other brother workers. We had it here in our home. Several of the uh, friends around the area came. Um, and then I guess that was in July of 23.
Mhm.
And then um, in August of that year, Nadine started visiting with me. Not that it was the first, because we've been friends for a while, but she started
Mhm.
visiting with me about a task force that they had,
Mhm.
and they were working along with Craig and some of the staff.
Mhm.
And she wondered if I would want to join their work. And I was like, well, is Craig on board with this? And she's like, yes, of course, yes. And she showed me text messages between them, and I was like, okay, yeah, okay, I will. And so we worked with Craig and some of the staff um, for, oh, well, up until December of 23. And it was about policy, about getting a newsletter out, education. Anyway, we worked on that for several months. And of course, Craig um, pulled the plug on it. He nixed it, said no policy. And we were like, okay. So after that happened, that was in December, and I wrote a letter to the workers and on our Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma staff. And I poured out my heart. I let them know there were pieces of the puzzle that I was missing. I didn't know I couldn't put it all together. We had this
Mhm.
horrible things that were bubbling to the surface, and it felt like nothing, like there was nothing being done. So within that letter, I did say the words stink and rot in the ministry. And it was like that was all they focused on. The rest of the
Mhm.
letter didn't matter. They focused on, I said stink and rot in the ministry. And then it things blew up. But anyway,
Mhm.
so that was in December. In January of 24, Craig did put out a semblance of a policy. It was very vanilla. And along with that, George Peterson wrote kind of a preface. And
Mhm.
within that preface, he talked about the foundation. And he said that the New Testament church, that the ministry was the foundation of the New Testament church.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
So that was January 5th. And I was laying in bed that morning, and I picked up my phone and I'm scanning my emails, and I come to that email and I read it. And I was like, oh my goodness, did he just say that? So I thought about it, and I realized in the past, I have said, and I can hear myself saying it, I've said it many times, the ministry is foundational. Jesus
Mm.
set up the ministry to go two and two, to be homeless. The ministry is foundational. I've said that. I
Mhm.
believed it 100%.
Mhm.
And then I read that and I was like, okay, something's not making sense.
Mhm.
So I lay there, I'm like, oh my Lord, you're gonna have to help me with this because I believe that the ministry is foundational. So I said, but I read this and something in me knows it's not right. And I
Mhm.
don't know how it's not right. You're going to have to help me with this. And that was
Mhm.
my prayer. In the very next moment, the very next breath, it was clear to me. And
Mhm.
I mean, it was clear. I sat up in bed and I just started typing out a letter with scripture and everything. And I saw it very clearly. Um, I I wrote out the letter and I sent it to my sister. And I said, I don't, does this make sense?
Mhm.
And she read it and she said, Laura, yes, that is it. I was like,
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
I gave it to Jim. I said, Jim, I don't know what to do with this. And he read it. He's like, I don't know what to make of it either. I said, I have to send it to the workers.
Mhm.
And so the next day I did.
Mhm.
Um, and it was, stating that the ministry was not the foundation. Um, anyway, everything that I believed, I now didn't believe. And that
Mhm.
was foundational shaking. you know,
Mhm.
it's it was
Mhm.
it was um it was big. So I sent that in January. In February, we had a visit with the sister workers that were here in the area, and it did not go well.
Mhm.
We have Sunday meeting, every Sunday meeting, and then we have a Wednesday rotation, and we've had that for a while. So in March, our meeting started leaving us.
Mhm.
Um, one couple talked to us about it, and he's he said the same thing that I had said. The ministry is foundational. I was like, no, it's not. And he said at that point, he said, well, scripture contradicts itself. And I was like, I can't believe that. And it shocked me.
Mhm.
I didn't say anything at the time, but I was like, oh my goodness. If you believe that, then you don't understand scripture. So anyway, the first couple that left told us that they could no longer sit around the emblems in our home with us. Like, okay, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but we understand.
Mhm.
And we did, of a sort. Um, that next Sunday, we were sitting, set up, sitting there waiting for people to arrive, and we got two text messages from two different families saying we're going somewhere else. Um, and then the last family, they left as well. Um, it was very sad at first. And you do go through a phase that you're angry, but thankfully, through prayer, God has given me peace with it. I have come to understand that they don't understand the path that I'm on
Mhm.
yet. Doesn't mean I know that what God did for me, He can do for every other person as well.
Mhm.
So um, that has given me a lot of peace. So we have continued to just have Bible studies, deep dive Bible studies with our family.
Mhm.
From the time that my parents and my sister and her family left meetings to the time that our meeting left us and we realized that what path we're on, it was 10, 11 years.
Mhm.
So these days I hear so much of people, the rift that comes with following God away from what we've known all of our lives. The rift that comes between family and friends. Um, I've heard that over and over and over again. Um, but every time I hear it, I just have to remind them 10 years,
Mhm.
10 years from the
Mhm.
time that my family left to the time that I did.
Mhm.
God is faithful. God is faithful in those 10 years. And, looking back, I don't I don't regret one bit of where I was. I don't regret one bit. It's my journey.
Mhm.
And um, it's just stepping stones all along the way. And
Mhm.
now I'm on a new stepping stone. And it doesn't seem to include that two by two ministry.
Mhm.
But it's 100% God. Um, just recently, I thanked George Peterson for his words. And I meant it wholeheartedly. I meant it from my heart. Thank you. And it wasn't derogatory when I said it to him. I thanked him wholeheartedly because it opened up the next stepping stone for me.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it's a journey,
Mhm.
and I am loving it. Yeah, that's where
Oh,
we,
oh, Laura. Oh my goodness. My heart, if I could reach through the screen, I would hug you. I
and I
know.
would take it.
Yes, I know big, big stuff, hard stuff, good stuff, all wrapped
Mhm.
into one.
Yeah, people, I hear frequently people have words for the year, and
Mhm.
last year, the word that came up over and over and over, and I mean, in letters, in conversation, it was untethered. And I
Mm.
said, I don't think I've ever used that word in my 54 years,
Mhm.
ever used the word
Mhm.
untethered. But
Mhm.
last year, it was over and over and over, untethered, untethered.
Mhm.
And this year, what resounds with me is praise. And I
Oh,
am in a season of praise and I love it. And
that is so
I don't
good.
know. It
Yeah.
is beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful to be there. He is faithful, my goodness. You know, um, God truly opens up our eyes to see Jesus in his glory.
Mhm.
Joy that comes is amazing.
Mhm.
And I can go forward with great joy, with glad
Mhm.
tidings of great joy.
Mhm.
And it is amazing. I have
Yeah.
never felt that before.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
It is, and it comes through. I know I've reached out to you to thank you for so many of the things you've shared in your articles that you've written for CCF, and that comes through of that just abounding joy.
Yes, it is amazing. It really is. And
Mhm.
just to read the word in a different light, it's I don't even have words for it. It's
Mhm.
amazing.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, well, I appreciate it, Laura, because I know, like you said at the very beginning, it's such a precious story and it's an emotional story. And so I feel honored that you're even willing to share it and trust me with it.
Well, I share because it glorifies God.
Hmm.
100% all along the way, He has brought me to where I am. It's
Hmm.
it's my journey, but it's been Him all
Yeah.
along. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, thank you. It's
Mm.
been amazing.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Thanks. You too.